Welcome to SoundBreaker. On today's episode, we're talking to Chris Lakey, who is a groundbreaker in the music industry. Thanks for joining us. For our
Thank you.
listeners who might not be familiar with you, sorry, you're welcome. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do? Not
Yeah,
too much, because we're going to dive into it later.
gotcha. Yeah, name's Chris Lakey. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Creative Sync at Kobalt Music, based here in Los Angeles. Been at Kobalt for 16 years, been in the industry since 2001. And yeah, let's go.
Great. Chris, before we dive into any of the details and all the juicy stuff, can you take us back to your teenage days, or maybe even younger? How were you inspired? What made you take that route of music? Was it mom, dad, cousin, friend, group? Please.
Yeah, music was always just a part of our household. With my parents just playing vinyl, obviously being in the backseat of their cars, always music going on the radio or whatnot. Then actually in high school, I inherited my dad and my grandfather's record collection. And then one thing I discovered at the time I was really into, this is like junior high, I was getting into hip hop. I started discovering that there were songs that sounded like the songs I was listening to, but the songs I was
Uh-huh.
listening to were snippets of the original songs, which happened to be samples. So the vinyl collection that I inherited from my father and my grandfather, I was finding all these original songs, and I just started really becoming, honestly, a vinyl junkie. Going to record stores, just trying to find like original samples. Yeah, and then really sort of was into hip hop when I got into college. I would say that my palette for music really expanded just due to the friends that I made and also just what I majored in, which was music industry at USC, college
Hmm.
radio, and just really expanding my horizons. And then obviously in college, I found that there was an actual true business in many different areas within the business for music. So yeah, my love and passion for music came from, household, just listening to music, and
Great.
then just loving art in general.
Always the best. Just curious, before I jump into the next question, is how many vinyls do you own in your collection? Do you still have the collection?
Oh
Did you
yeah.
add more to it?
Yeah, I would say right now it's probably around 3,200.
Oof.
Yeah, most are actually boxed up in my attic. I keep the special ones out. I actually want to go back and get like a True Techniques turntable. I have
H-
a couple of turntables,
How do
but
you find when you need something? Like, do you know everything is labeled and you have like a metadata list in your computer?
no,
Like,
actually, what it is if I look in the box, I can pull out a vinyl and know what it is. So, at this point, the collection like spans so many different genres. So I'll have,
oh,
honestly, like ambient drum and bass, intelligent dance music in one, but then I'll also have like funk music from a certain era in another. And honestly, it's one of those things where, we all have our own little messes, but we know where everything is. That's how my collection
correct.
is.
I bet there's some classics because you inherited that
Yeah.
jazz and disco and all of that. Like some of the
Jazz,
real, yes.
jazz disco. I have like
Oof.
two Sergeant Pepper's albums that haven't even been vinyl that haven't been opened.
Uh
I
huh.
have rare vinyl from overseas. I was getting it from Germany in like the early 2000s. So yeah, it was a bit of finding, but to be honest with you, what I really like, and I still do like doing this, is actually going into a vinyl store and talking to like a shop owner, or just honestly just digging through and having sort of that like that feel and that touch experience. And honestly, pulling something up, not really knowing what it is, but it having a cool cover, and if
Hmm.
it's within my budget, giving it a shot.
Interesting. um, Chris, every journey has a starting point. Can you share the story of how you landed your first job in Sync and what sparked your interest in this unique, intersection of music and media together?
Yeah. So as I said, I graduated from the University of Southern California, their
Yeah.
School of Music. They had a music industry program, which essentially is a business program all geared towards the music industry. And then
Hmm.
the other side of the program was performance, which a lot of people are in performance. But I was in the music industry program. And really what I recognized early on was that I needed to figure out what I kind of didn't want to do. And I still had school as a fallback plan. So
Hmm.
I interned everywhere, for whether it was management, whether it was at big companies, whether MTV, back in the day when we actually had distribution, BMG distribution, labels, managers. And really what the turning point was for me was Donald Passman, who was a legend in the music industry, was a guest speaker at USC in a couple of my classes. And I remember just
Hmm.
talking to him about sort of what my passions were. I love the art, I love music, but I also really liked the business end. I really liked the intricacies of copyright. I really liked, I was on my way to law school. I actually applied to law school, got in law schools, but I was really into what I call like the left brain, right brain of
Hmm.
within the music industry. And he actually told me about music publishing. And he's like, there's obviously the copyright aspects, there's a licensing aspect, there's a clearance aspect, but there's a whole creative aspect to it also. And you're around songwriters and really, the power of a song. And honestly, after that, I started seeking out publishing jobs, which was at the time, I didn't really even know what that meant. It sounds crazy. I actually walked into Universal Music Publishing, like physically, and
Hmm.
asked them, "Do you have any internships available?" They said, "Actually, we do in the sync department, but here, apply for it and come back." I applied for it and I started interning at Universal Music Publishing, starting in the summer of going into my senior year,
Hmm.
and that eventually turned into a job. So when I graduated, actually that October,
Hmm.
they had a position for me, and I just started as an assistant in the licensing and at
Wow.
Universal.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, publishing is its own world. Is
It
a lot
is.
of even a lot of people in the business still don't understand it. You know.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I'm learning about it. I'm learning more about it every single day. I mean, obviously, with the advent of things like TikTok or UGC content, and then just how copyrights are split, and
Correct.
it's always changing and always evolving. So I think all of us are continuously learning.
Absolutely. Reflecting on your time with at UMG from 2002 to 2008, sync and media looked very different then, especially before streaming emerged and mainstream. Can you tell us about working in sync during the time and how you've seen the field evolve and evolve with streaming?
Yeah. So, at that time, I would say for a lot of artists, a lot of
Hmm.
bands, sync was sort of looked at as there was a benefit to it, but there were a lot of detriments to it. For instance, would people want to do Taco Bell ad or Pepsi ad? A lot of artists thought that was quote unquote selling out. Or why would I do that? Why would I want my music there attached to this TV show, this, that, and the other? Because, prior to streaming, most artists made their money off of CD sales and
That's a lot of
touring
money.
and merch. And
Yes.
there's a lot of money. So the
Yes.
so the focus for them was how do we get on radio, like, traditional radio,
Yeah.
and how do we sell CDs? How do we sell merch? And then how do we tour? I always think back because I would see, first week numbers. Now I think about it, first week numbers back then, where it's like, oh, someone only sold 350,000 copies of their album, and it was quote unquote a flop. Whereas
Hmm.
nowadays, if you do 100,000
You're a
cumulative sales,
superstar.
you are a superstar. And
Yes.
just the economics of it too. Back then, a CD was $20, so you do the economics of
Yes.
350,000 times $20. Where
Yeah.
nowadays you start doing the fractional that you get from streaming, this, that, and the other. But
Yes.
all that to be
Correct.
said, I think sync back then was very, 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 very passive. Meaning, maybe a top flight director had a relationship with a band and was making a movie, and the band was like, okay, we'll like license it and here pass it to our publisher so they could approve it, and it's more on a licensing
Yes.
end. And even back then, the creative departments within sync were very, very, very small, because I'm sure they probably had a lot of caveats on, like, this band doesn't want to do this, 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 don't bring this, don't do this, this, this. So again, it was very, very passive back then. Now, post streaming,
Yes.
post the CD era, it's syncs are part of the narrative and highly important to every artist, not only for income streams and revenue, but it's also for awareness, right? Traditional radio, there's only whatever 20 slots for artists and songs on traditional radio. However, a lot of people are discovering music via different television shows, video games, film. Not only that, it's also, in a sense, passive income. So whether you're aware of it or not, but if your song, you license a song for a series, and maybe you as an artist don't see it, you are making that passive income, and there's also income to be made further. And then also just on a global level now, where productions are coming out of Europe, out of West Africa, out of Asia. So there's sync opportunities there. And again, now sync is part of the actual narrative. Now most of my conversations at the creative level with artists, with managers, are how could we tee up syncs in quantity, let alone those sort of evergreen syncs that actually move the needle, because they do understand that, if a song is used in Euphoria, it can move the needle with your Spotify streams. If the song is in FC, the FIFA game, it will move the needle. And then also, with ads and trailers and still those sort of evergreen syncs, you're making like a substantial income off of it.
Was it fair to say that back in the day, maybe millions, if not even hundreds of millions of dollars been lost for a lot of the artists not getting involved in sync, because of sync was, as you said, it's part of selling out. It's not being true to what do you do or who you are.
Honestly, I wouldn't say that, just because also just the sync market wasn't as developed as it is now, right?
Yeah,
I see. Netflix wasn't around, Apple Plus, streaming services, how we actually ingest sync, audio, music to audio visual was just very, very different back then.
But TV was around, the commercial were around, movies, TV shows. I mean, people were glued more to TV than there was no devices. The only entertainment was the movie theater or your TV every day, the news, the shows, commercials. Yeah.
Yeah. If I just kind of think back on it, but if, sort of those bigger television shows at that time, they used music, but not in the sense that they use music as a driver and to help shape culture and an actual show now. You think back to, this is even older, but something like a movie like Purple Rain or 16 Candles, like top to bottom, or The Crow, from top to bottom, those soundtracks were incredible. Now that we look at it, like, oh my God, these names on it, how did they afford it? But those were very, very rare. Like if you look at, television show, like say like a Seinfeld or even Friends, the theme songs were huge, but within the shows, they weren't really using music the way that I would say, even like an Abbott Elementary now uses music within the show.
If you notice that show Entourage, I remember.
Oh yeah.
In the end of each episode, they always had a different theme song for it. And it was, songs from artists, whether it was Kanye, it was some others, or some Latin kings, I think. Oh, so many. So many songs. Rock. It depends on the, the ending of the show.
Yeah. So that, when it started breaking, and again, like something like an HBO was definitely like tastemaker, but also pushing that envelope back then, where it's like, actually, music should be part of this narrative, and there's a conversation to be continued after the show's over, so that we're still talking about like Perry Farrell and like Jane's Addiction song that was in Entourage, and it lives outside of that. So it's I think at the time, just the sync world wasn't as developed as it is here holistically. But were there artists who left money on the table because of, how, and again, they had to position themselves the way that they felt that they had to position themselves.
Yes.
Probably so.
Got it. Let's fast forward to your impressive journey at Kobalt, where you climbed the ladder from music licensing to your current role as a senior vice president of global creative sync. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. By the way, for our listeners who might not be fully understanding how sync works, could you explain what is your current role?
Yeah, so I break my role into two aspects.
Please.
The global creative sync team at Kobalt right now, there's 27 people on the team. So there's a management of people aspect. But what the listeners probably want to hear more about is sort of what the day-to-day role of doing creative sync means. So for instance, I primarily work on films. So my day on the creative end starts honestly, I wake up and I read the trades just to see what's going on in the film, TV space here in North
Mm-hmm.
America and globally.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it starts with text messages and emails from music supervisors, production companies, directors about what they're looking for particular projects. Whether it, in some cases, are we have a song in, but we know we can't afford it. Do you have other options? To, hey, we have a movie that's coming out in a year and a half, and we want to just put together ideas for the director. Here are the themes. Here are the moods. It could be, hey, we have a soundtrack coming out with a project, and we have the 5 songs that we definitely know are going in, but we also need other ideas. Do you have songwriters, producers who want to take a stab at, creating bespoke material? So really, it's really truly a creative process of me analyzing, pitching, knowing Kobalt's songwriters, producers, our artists, our repertoire,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to fill that creative need that whomever the creative is needs. So whether it's, I would say some days, some weeks, I'm stuck in eras, meaning I could be working on 3 projects and they all take place in the late 70s, early 80s, and 2 of them take place in upstate New York and 1 takes place in like Austin, Texas. And I have to research what were kind of people listening to in Austin, Texas at this era, like what was charting. And then I can
Yes.
go in the Kobalt catalog and pitch
And
from
see.
there or pitch other ideas. And then there's other times where it's like we're looking for the newest and freshest things that you have coming out. So sending that over, being budget conscious, making sure to work within the budget of, whoever the outside clients are. And then a lot of my job too is being very proactive about, our signings, our songwriter signings, our songwriters who
Mm-hmm.
happen to be artist signings, and making sure that the supervision community, directors, production companies, pretty much anyone who touches music to picture is aware.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of marketing on that end. And, as a publisher, we're signing songwriters all the time. And again, some songwriters are behind the scenes. They write the songs. They're not artists. So there's
Mm-hmm.
an interesting way of pitching and marketing and developing them to the supervision community versus a songwriter who happens to be the artist. So I can kind of piggyback on, hey, we have this songwriter who is the artist. And that's another strategy in terms of, pitching them their music, what they want for in terms of the sync space. And this is on a global level. This is, again, I'm one of 27. Everyone on my team are all
Wow.
excellent at what they do. They all handle different media, different clients. So also it's just a management of information. And by information, I mean music, which I'm passionate about, but it does come down to being very, very organized also. So it's sort of, setting those templates and benchmarks, ideas, targets, and plans for the team to be able to be successful in their own right and, their relationships. And they're equipped with everything that they need from Kobalt's end.
Got it. So you're also grooming, I don't know if that's the right word, new upcoming talent as far as music writers or lyric
100
writers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and a lot of them, and I wouldn't say a lot of them, but just a lot of people, the sync space and sort of any of these niches within the music industry are,
Yeah.
A lot of people have like outside views of how they work. So it's my job to explain to them how it works, explain to them like why maybe their single isn't working for sync, but maybe the 8th song on their album actually works better because it has better pacing, it has more dynamics, and it's working in this media versus that media.
Got it.
So there is a bit of education, which is fine, and that's my job. And again, like I like educating our writer clients and management about how sync works, because at the end of the day, I want everyone to try to be as successful and get as many wins on the board as possible. And that only works if we're sort of speaking the same language and they sort of know what we're doing.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, my own thing just popped up in my head. I'm sure you've seen it or you heard of it or you heard about it. What the most amount of money was paid for a song to be in a commercial or movie, whether you witnessed it from Kobalt or some other company? I'm sure some numbers were like mine, but just curious for me and for our listeners.
I honestly cannot say that, because
you're gonna have to mention the artist. No, don't mention the artist name. If you,
I would get in trouble. I
wouldn't want you to get in trouble.
Yeah, no. I would say that I I can't say even a number or anything, but I would say that just in general, in the landscape of
Yeah.
sync over the years, it's been in the
Yeah.
millions.
In the minute for a song.
Yeah.
Wow. To be used in a commercial or a movie or a show, whatever. Unbelievable. Wow. Well, this is great for the
Not
viewers to
not
inspire
the
the artists.
not the norm, but
Not the
yes.
yes. uh, Kobalt's slogan: "We exist to empower creators." I love that. Speaks volumes about its mission. How do you personally align with this message when it comes to making decisions for Creative Sync, ensuring that every move empowers the creators you work with?
Yeah, so that is definitely Kobalt's slogan. And again, I've been at Kobalt going on 16 years now.
Mhm.
Kobalt started in 2000, the year 2000. I joined in 2008, so I've seen it grow from. I mean, the LA office when I started was 5 people to where we are now. One thing that I love about Kobalt, the ethos of transparency, and also the ethos of we administer our core business model is that we administer publishing, meaning that our creators, our clients, our writers,
Mhm.
most of them own their own publishing, and we happen to administer them, meaning that there's a partnership there. I truly like that. A writer artist creates something, they sign to Cobalt.
Mhm.
Cobalt didn't create it, so in my mind, it's sort of like, yeah, why should we own a piece of it? We should be partners in this. And every step of the way, as partners, when they succeed, we succeed. When we succeed, they succeed. So part of the empowerment is honestly intellectual property to who the client is, them owning their intellectual property in that sense, and then having partners, whether it's a writer has a manager, they have a business attorney, like
Mhm.
hopefully they put their trust in those people to help move their vision forward. And for
Correct.
Cobalt as an administrator of publishing, it's sort of the same way. So I think the empowerment starts there, and then secondarily, just as it pertains on the sync side, it's really communication. Like, I make it a point to communicate pretty much with all of our active clients who want to be part of Sync, because
Mhm.
each one is very different and they have different ideas for what they want, where they want their music, how they're positioning themselves.
Mhm.
Whether and I never fault any artists for however they want to position themselves. I can only give them the perspective from my perspective and my expertise from the Sync side. So whether we have an
Got
artist who
it.
comes in and drops off an album and says, here are the 10 songs. Don't ask me for any more. Try to pitch these songs. I'm going out on tour. That's the way we operate. It's totally fine. And me and my team will figure out a way to, bridge success for what they want there.
Mhm.
There are other people who are like, here's my album. I have all these other additional songs I'm willing to write. I'm willing to, do day-to-day work. I want to be in communication. That's great too, because at the end of the day, and I always say this, I love what I do so much, but at the end of the day, it's truly sales. I'm trying to sell a song to fit a in a sync. So one song
Mhm.
to on in one film in one scene. And the best way for me to sell is to have as much knowledge about the song and about the artist and about my client, the songwriter, if they are the artist or not, as possible. So the more information I have, the better it is for me to sell that particular song. And that only comes from communication. So empowerment really is about communication, like good, bad, and different. Let's talk. I will tell you why this is working, why this hasn't worked, what else I need from you, what you as a client need from me. Very open about like our team. If you're one of our clients and you're buzzing in Germany, it's like go and I will connect you with our German creatives there, because they're on the ground. They know what projects are coming through, so you can have sort
Yep.
of like that dialogue and discussion.
Interesting. Um, with your extensive career, it's fair to say you've developed a crystal ball into the industry trends. In your personal opinion, how can technologies like AI help the sync industry?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think when tech comes into any space, it's always jarring at first. So I feel as though right now our industry, even the music industry in general, is in a bit of like things are very jarring because they're happening very fast on the tech side. The way I look at tech and AI is they're all tools. Like my iPhone is a tool,
Correct.
the apps are tools.
Yeah.
We move from recording analog to digital out of a box, and it's just a tool.
Hmm. Hmm.
So really what I think is, will it help us? And I don't mean cut corners in a bad way, but spend less, I should say, spend less time on certain aspects of the industry, and we can cut down time. I think that's great. What we really need to just be cautious about is, protecting copyright. So there will be, there are probably going to be AI solutions for trying to manage just the amount of data. I think like
Hmm.
in the sphere of like the copyright world, whether it's ASCAP, whether
Hmm.
it's BMI, whether it's registrations, whether it's split disputes, like what that looks like, I don't know. I think on the back end that could be really, really helpful and really, really useful.
Absolutely. Yes.
Especially if there are, I don't personally, I don't believe there will ever be a central market for that, but there could be various central markets for that where you as an end user of music trying to sync it can go and get the information that you need.
Hmm.
But then, there's also the detriments as we see with, AI created and deep fakes and this, that, and the other. And to me, that's always just going to be tech's going to push, then the industry needs to coalesce, fight back, and then
Hmm.
we come to some sort of agreement. And really right now, I think, especially in music, it's so interesting because we all can agree that music drives culture. Like music is
Correct.
very important, very, very important to driving culture.
Hmm.
However, out of all the art, like, painters, any type of art, design, I feel as though music is valued the least in general. Like, you walk into a store, you hear music, you're like, most people just think it's free, but it's actually setting a mood, right? If you walked
Sure.
into,
Sets the mood. Absolutely.
yeah, you
Yes.
walked into a high-end furniture
You
store
walk in.
and
How many
they're,
times you heard it? The gym sucks. The music sucks at this gym.
yeah,
Oh, I cannot work out to this music. So it
yeah,
does
but
set the mood.
they
It is a very
probably,
important aspect.
yeah, but they probably have it on for a specific reason, a similar reason why they probably make
Yes.
gyms very cold, right? So it's
Yes. Yes.
but this is just kind of like across the board. And obviously if you look at the news now, like the whole TikTok fight with Universal, it's like because a lot of the TikTok content driven is music based, whether it's dancing, whether it's
Yes.
music behind
Yes.
this, that, and the other. So I think really just with tech and music in general going forward is just at least, and again, I'm on the music side, is making sure that we're valuing music. And it's very hard to do. Again, you see a painting, you walk in, they tell you how much it is. That's kind of it. And the valuation shifts. And people recognize and understand that. You hear music and it's like some people just think it's free. Like some people
No,
think
it's not.
it's yeah. So I'm not afraid of technology. I embrace it because again, I sort of see it as a tool, and it's just like I'm just gonna have to figure out how to use this tool to my advantage to help myself, Cobalt, my
Yes.
clients to
Well,
maximize
I
what
like
they
what you're saying is a tool, as long as continue to be used as a tool, not to replace the creative part,
Mhm.
because that's when it gets a little funny. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I mean, it's. I don't know if it's not going to fully replace, but
but you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You said something. You said, music is one of the main drivers for culture, and it's not recognized that, but really it is. It goes hand in hand with fashion. And my opinion is, AI is great as a tool. When it comes to music, I think as long as AI doesn't live in the culture. AI based on data
Hmm.
can make probably great music, generative AI, but based on music that already been made, learn from it. But with AI comes up with its own new sounds and own new, it has to live in the culture. It has to live out. It has to live in communities. A lot of the trends coming from Africa. So AI going to have to go and live in Africa and listen and understand the history and the culture to come up with. So that's where kind of the creative part, I think, need to stay. We need to protect the integrity of art. and the
Yeah.
creative people. Yes.
Yep. 100%. I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, with all technology, it always has to be communicated through a
Yeah.
human at some point. So it's like, to me, there's the AI conversation about production and this, that, and the other. However, it's
Hmm.
like, if you're using Chat GPT because you run into writer's block and you have all the ideas and it's giving
Hmm.
you ideas to spark something to help you finish like the last four stanzas of a song,
Yeah.
is that acceptable? Is that not? Or to me, it's like, there are a number of producers who are incredible, but don't know how to, play piano, but they do everything
Correct.
via, Pro Tools, and they put bars together, but they make incredible music. That to me is like AI. And we're living in that now, and we constantly use that. So that's sort of like, we don't really think of it in that way, but that's a form of AI too. But at the end of the day, that producer has to produce it, deliver it to an artist to sing, and it has to all come together. So again, I think we do have, enough just people and the business structure to protect moving forward. It's just that, it's always the initial, we've
Yes.
been dumped into the cold end of the deep end of the water. So it's like the initial shock, and we want to make moves and do this, that, and the other. But also too, I just think that there just needs to be communication between tech and music and protecting, the art. And it's always going to be a pull and push. That's just how business is. When two entities get together, it's
Yes.
always pull and push.
I'm sure your global, your, excuse me, I'm sure your global role has significantly influenced diversity and, inclusion in the sync space. How can our music industry do a better job at providing equal opportunities?
Yeah, this is a multi-layered question. It's a question with a multi-layered
Answer.
answers, I should say, right?
Yes.
Because everyone has different opinions, and they're all right, and we all need to just consider them. One of the big
Yes.
things for me that I feel in my side of the industry is that
Yeah.
it has to start at the entry level, like diversity, inclusion, different voices in the room has to start at the entry level. I understand. Look, I love the college I went to, and it's great. And literally, I'm like a diehard USC fan. But I also think about where I am now. Like, I did need USC in a sense to help get where I am, but I kind of walked into not knowing really what I wanted to do as an intern, and walked into Universal and asked for an internship. Could a high school
Correct.
graduate who hasn't gone to college do that? Absolutely. Uh, so I think all that to say, I think the entry level to being like an assistant for me, an assistant for an A&R, that to me, you need a college degree and these sort of like metrics that we put down. And I'm not saying that, obviously there are many people who, black, brown, women, there are other that go to college and do well. That's not to say that we need to lower it for that reason, but it's like the pool of
Correct.
entry needs to be very open at an entry level. Because for me, at my position, if I needed to hire, say, a director level, really what I'm going to do is really ask people in the industry who they recommend. And you have to work your way up to either that level, or someone recommends someone who's like, hey, this person's a manager at this company, but they're doing like director level work. And the only way you get in those positions is you have to start from an entry level. The music industry success isn't linear, so to speak. It's not like you do this and then this is guaranteed to happen and this is guaranteed to happen. Say like if you wanted to become an architect. However, to me, diversifying the sort of assistance pool, and
Hmm.
then from there, those who rise to the top rise. And then I think that that's how you sort of spread and manifest the different voices in the room. And that's sort of like a mission that I try to do.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's very different for different aspects of the industry. Voices in the room at an executive management level
Yeah.
perspective, what we're signing, how we're defining different genres or cultures, this, that, and the other. There's all those conversations to be had. But for me, I really want to try to value, getting different people in the room at the starting level, because at the starting level for any company, for any industry, the in theory. Those who work hard,
Correct.
hopefully will get promoted and elevated. And if that pool is a mixture of, the mixture of America, the
Yes.
faces of America, then to me, over time, that's how that sort of happens.
And and you emphasize, I noticed that it's really important because it's the grassroots of all the knowledge, what's going to set you up and open you and get you elevated to where you want to be.
Yeah, I always say, like, again, I loved USC. I loved my program. I always tell people coming when I started at Universal as an assistant, USC put me 8 months ahead of someone who had never been in a music industry program at USC. So I came in knowing certain terms and if I looked at a contract, I know what MFN means. I know what like how splits work. But if someone also was just very motivated and eager to learn and work who hadn't done that program, in 8 months, they would have known the same thing I would have known. And we were probably at equal footing at that point. So to me, it's like invest in actually, finding people who are motivated. And, I think mentorship is important too. And that doesn't mean that can mean anything. Like I have a number of mentees, and some it's just honestly, we just check in once a month and just talk about like life, and they'll tell me what they're going through. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you need to stick this out. Like there's nothing else to do, but put your head down and just work hard. Trust me. So, or others, it's a lot more involved. So I just think that that's how we actually start that process.
Great. That's an incredible journey you had. The music industry is known for its challenges and setbacks. Can you share a difficult moment you faced in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think this is just, for me, a difficult moment for me was just realizing and this is just me realizing just even as, like, I love music. I love all types of music. When I got to the point when I knew I needed to separate personal art music that I like and love versus, getting the ball across the line for various types of clients, genres, dealing with different type of managers and artists. Because I do believe, especially on the sync side, I do believe that there are solutions for everyone, and it's just my job to figure that out. So it wasn't difficult in a sense, like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? It was more for myself and to expand like my palette. When I really started working creatively, I would say like my true creative journey started like in 2010 when I was like really doing creative. I started figuring out where the holes were in creatively what I listened to. So to be honest with you, singer-songwriters was not a strength of mine. But you know what I tried to do, and I'm still doing it now? I would just sit and research. I'd go on playlists. I would watch old YouTubes. I'd read like articles. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why this works. And honestly, going to live shows. One of the biggest things, I know that it's in vogue for people to be like, I like all music, but like country music. And I used to be like that back in the day too. What changed me when I went to Nashville and saw the music live, when I was in studio with people and saw the creative process. And I remember, I forgot what show it was, but honestly, I was one amongst 1,000 people. And I was like, honestly, the fault is mine. I need to understand like why everyone here knows all of these songs. And just because, oh my God, like this isn't the genre I'm into, like, I was like, no, I have to figure this out. So after that point, I told myself, like, I need to try to educate myself as much as possible on as much as possible. Like there are obviously a lot of music and artists that I love that to me, it's sort of like the back of my hand. And yes, I do research on them, but I actually get a kick out of really, really deep diving into maybe artists and genres that they either are blind spots or I never really thought about them that much. Like we have Kobalt has the Roy Orbison catalog that we administer. I knew Roy Orbison, Pretty Woman. Then after, this is years ago, when I did my deep dive on Roy Orbison and just started listening to like his music, his story, and learning everything about, like, now I'm like the biggest Roy Orbison fan. And that to me wouldn't have happened if I would have been like, oh, okay, it's Oh Pretty Woman, it's Running Scared, it's like like there's like two other songs and that's all I really need to know. It's like, no, there were different eras of Roy, like just Roy as a person, his voice, his songwriting, like, you know. So to me, that's just an example of, for me, something that was difficult. And trust me, it was difficult for like, I remember 6, 7, 8 months, like, okay, I have to do this. I have to do this. And now it's actually, I sort of relish that when we sign something that I'm not too familiar with and I do a deep dive and I'm like, wow, this person has like millions of streams. Like I need to figure this out for myself. So yeah.
Interesting. Very inspiring. In your opinion, what are some of the misconceptions people have about the music industry? I should say common misconception, excuse me.
Yeah. I always say this and it sounds so cliche, but it's called the music business, not the music, meaning music is first, but it's called the music business. And there needs to be the business aspect of it also. So I think a misconception is that, you know, and to have any sort of business, there needs to be organization, there needs to be plans, there needs to be like teams around. So, you know, a song can be great. And, you know, those rare songs can break through with the business side is disorganized. But to be honest with you, most songs, most artists who break through, whatever that means, their business side is usually very, very organized and to a T. So I think that, and this is very, very hard, especially for, you know, starting out artists or artists that don't have too big of a budget. You have to remember that you're your own CEO and you're your own president. So, you know, I have many friends, many artists who don't have huge teams. And what I tell them is once a month on a Sunday, you need to be the CEO of your business. And like on a Sunday, just block out 3 hours and go through your entire business. What are your expenses? Like what label talks are you having? What's the advantages, the cons, the pros and cons to signing with so-and-so? These 3 managers want to go after you. How do you want to, you know, approach them? Like, what are your future goals, right? Like, so you have to, it's hard. You have to manage yourself as a business and not just, oh, I have these songs and what I'm going to do is just release a song a week for like 4 weeks to an album, which is great. But also what's the plan after that? Who are you like what publications are you trying to go after? Who are you contacting? Like make a list of people you want to reach out to, knock them off of that list. It's very, art business is very organizational too. Like even more so than sometimes financial businesses and other types of businesses, you need to try to be as organized as possible because I truly believe if you have sort of a roadmap to kind of where you want to go, even if you veer off, you sort of have North Stars. So, you know, maybe you want to go on tour, do a solo tour, but oh my God, you know, a big artist wants you to now open for them. You're going to scrap your original tour solo, but now you're thinking, okay, in a year and a half after playing for this person, I can up my venues for my, you know, my solo tour. It's like your North Star is still your solo tour, but you're being diverted to something better. So I just really think organization is important. I think that that's like the biggest misconception. And then also too, and this is just with anyone and everyone, what success means. I think it's very important for artists to define what success means to them. And they really need to be honest with themselves and really what they want. It's very easy to look at your friends who are artists who are doing this, that, and the other. It's very easy to look at, you know, super A-listers, and that's fine. That could be a goal. And honestly, don't be afraid to say it and don't be afraid to try to achieve it. But you also need to make sure that you're doing, you know, sort of check marks along the way and be proud of yourself. Be proud of yourself for getting a label deal. Like celebrate that for like an hour. Be like, that was a goal. I checked that off. I'm happy with it. Celebrate that. Now what's sort of like the next goal? Because as David Bowie said, your life as an artist, you're never going to reach the peak. So, you know, thinking that, oh, I just want to do what Taylor Swift's doing. Guess what? Taylor Swift still has multiple goals she wants to reach. Same with Beyonce, same with Harry Styles, even when they get to those levels. Because when you're an artist, you're never going to reach the peak. You always want more in a good way. Yes. So I think it's just very important to also just sort of set those sort of benchmarks and things that you can achieve, things that are pie in the sky, long-term, short-term.
Interesting. As you know, collaboration is often a key element in the music world. Could you share a memorable collaboration story of someone you work with that left an impact on you?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm like collaborating every day. So it's whether it's internally with, like, I work very closely with like my A&R team. And when they
Hmm.
have signings and they're in studio and they're like, we're going to go and like listen to songs of this new signing. Do you want to come from a sync perspective? And I'm like, absolutely. And I'm sitting there and, the A&R may be listening to it for, oh, this cut will be good. I'm going to send it to maybe this artist to cut. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there hearing other songs like, I'm actually working on this film project. I think this could be good for it. Would you
Hmm.
mind tweaking it, doing this, that, and the other? So there's inspiration on that end. There's collaborations with artists directly. I mean, at this point in like my career, like I talk to a lot of artists just directly, and we're just spitting ideas back and forth to one another, and just being involved in that collaborative process of them making their music and them trusting me.
Hmm.
And then obviously there's collaborations, in the film world on like projects or soundtracks that I work on when I'm getting Kobalt writers and producers involved with songs for, whether it's big movies, whether it's small indie documentaries. Like our business is built on collaborations. No one's making this all on their own. You
Yeah,
have to be able to collaborate because that's how, honestly, too, just how creative juices get flowing.
correct. Correct. Um, I know we touched on that subject earlier. Technology has significantly changed the music landscape. How have achievement or advancement, excuse me, in technology influenced your work uh, and the music industry in a whole, or as a whole?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things on the sync side for on the advancement of technology has been the technology of the streamers. So if you look at sort of what Hollywood looks like now, Netflix is global. Netflix is global, Apple Plus is global, Amazon is global, and they have really influenced, especially on the film and TV production side, for those traditional companies to look globally also. So, and what happens with that is that opens up new doors, and that opens up new music to be used, new territories for music to be used, new pockets of music and genre and culture to be placed in TV shows, to be so to me, the biggest influence on tech right now is just trying to stay on top of all of these, exciting projects that are coming globally, and thinking about sync from a global perspective and not necessarily traditionally in the past, and especially just being in LA, that, oh, the center of entertainment is just in Los Angeles. It still is to an extent, but there are also incredible productions coming out of the UK, out of Germany, out of Portugal, out of West Africa, out of different countries in Asia, and it's
Correct.
Australia. So to me, I forgot the famous economist said, like, the Earth is flat. Thinking about like how we communicate and how, right now we're talking via Zoom, or how we can call someone and FaceTime them and they can be in Poland at this very moment. It's like that's the sort of way I'm thinking about sync and art and music in sync. And that's only happened because technology has really accelerated us to this point.
Interesting. For our listeners and for everybody, or viewers, how do you stay updated to your latest trends or on the latest trends, innovations, or changes in the industry, and how important it is to continue to learn?
Yeah. Continue to learn every single day. That's my motto. Like I said, how I stay up on trends. Uh, my When I wake up in the morning, it's I first like Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline. Go to this other site called The Numbers. So I sort of try Pitchfork. There's other music uh, publications that I look up. That's the start of my day, and that's whether just reading headlines. I save a lot of articles to read when I have like downtime to really like get into them, and then there's uh, you know other things that I'll read immediately. So that helps with trends. Also, honestly, I'm a carnivore for music, so there's a lot of playlists that I follow, and yes, I follow like Rap Caviar, New Music Friday, and Lorem, and Pigeons and Planes. But there are other playlists that I follow, just random, that have like 1,000 listeners. But it's just like interesting music coming out of Guadalajara, and I have like a playlist, and it's like, oh, cool, like indie, this, that, and the other, different subgenres I try to follow. I'm always on YouTube. I'm not on TikTok, but I go through because I want to stay on top of trends and things that are happening. And honestly,
Yes.
recommendations from friends. Obviously, I have like a lot of friends and colleagues just in the industry.
Mhm.
So even just flipping through, even just like their Instagrams and seeing like what they're listening to. And then, for my job in particular, I do rely on management of artists directly sending me things and ideas, the team of A&Rs at Kobalt globally, my team globally on the creative sync side. And pretty much people just kind of like I trust. Like my brother's not in the music industry, but he sends me great stuff that I get into. Or I have friends who are just like, hey, have you heard this? And I'll just, absorb it in the way that I need to absorb it. So, it's a constant feeding of information. I always say, like, again, I'm like a carnivore for anything music related, but if you ask me to like cook, I can't do that. So I know what sort of like my strengths and weaknesses are in that sense. But yeah, I know this is like my career. I'm passionate about it. So, and I truly value art and the artist. So the more I can know, the better. I know I won't ever know everything, and I'm happy to ask questions. I'm happy to dive deep. I come from a place of, I know a lot about music, but I'm never pretentious about it. I want everyone to discover whatever they discover at the time they discover it. And yeah, so that's kind of how I stay on top of, and also going to live shows. I'm personally just very big on seeing things live in whatever iteration they are, whether it's a DJ at a warehouse or it's an orchestra. Like I like seeing it live with fans and see how they react.
Interesting. Well, for our listeners and viewers who's going to be extremely inspired by your story and your journey so far, some of them might want to take the same path and say, hey, I'm inspired, I'm motivated by Chris's journey so far in the music business. Yes, if he did it, I could do it also. But I have to say one thing, though. I do a lot of interviews, and everybody have their own way of inspiring others and their own journey. Yours, I have to say, is done. You're the perfect example of somebody wants to do something, anything in life, whether it's in the music. You took the right steps from the beginning. I have to say, every step you made so far, from talking to you, listening to your story, it's very inspiring, obviously, and for our listeners. So it does work because not always everything is traditional. It's not always the traditional way and a conventional way. But yours was going to school, follow your passion. What do you like? Have the courage to walk in and to ask for, hey, what's the worst could happen? No, we're not interested. We don't want to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
At an entry level position where you absorbed all the information, you learned. You were an intern, unpaid, but again, the money you earn, it's actually knowledge, and knowledge is wealth and power, and you learned that, and then from there you got a job. They liked you, they trusted you. So please give us advice, tips on people who are going to be extremely inspired by you. A lot of our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I would say, especially if you're starting out, you may think you want to do just one specific thing in the industry, but don't be afraid to start somewhere else just to get in sort of the work pool, right? Like you may want to be A&R, but you have an opportunity to work like on a sync team, but the A&R office is right next to the sync team. So if you can work there, you can just walk over to the A&R folks and be like, hey, I'm on a sync team, but I'm actually very interested in A&R. I'd love to just grab coffee with you and maybe chat about like what you do. Very big on like informational interviews. You'd be surprised, myself included, as you could probably see. People like to talk, and they like to talk about themselves, and not in a conceited way, but because you get to a certain point and you want to help others. Also understand, like, everyone also too is sort of, you're on your own path. So people are inspired by my path. That's great. And I'm here for that. But also understand, like, you are also on your own path. And I'm a true believer that if you work really hard and work like really hard and are passionate about something, luck and opportunity finds you. So, I always correct people when they're like, "You're so lucky to do what you do." I'm like, I actually worked very hard. And you know what happened? I was splashing around in the pool, and it attracts attention and sharks, right? So sharks in a good way. So to me,
Yes.
it's just very important that if you commit to interning or working at a job, and even if it's not what you want to do at that exact moment, do that job so well that your bosses, the higher ups, whoever, can do nothing but recommend you for when you want to make the jump or there's a opening position. It's like commit yourself to doing that, and then also just absorb and be a sponge. And especially, I'm a bit older, but especially if you're younger, you should be going out to shows. And you want to work in music, you should be going out to shows. The lines to reaching out to artists and managers now is actually very flat. You can I DM artists and managers all the time who aren't even signed to Kobalt, just to say like, man, I really love your stuff. If I can do it, you can do it. And you start building connections that way. And I've done that with people who we've either eventually signed or even artists who are now big. Like we started talking like 3 years ago, just like, hey, I like your music and this, that, and the other. So really the hardest part is just starting. Don't take no personally. Like, people are going to say no. People are not going to reply to your emails. You just have to be yourself and just try to fight through that. But if this is something you want to do, you definitely can do it. It's just, you got to start somewhere. So just start.
What an amazing, motivating advice. Absolutely. I hope all of our listeners in SoundBreaker take that and go ahead and proceed their dreams. Before we end this lovely, beautiful, very insightful interview, Chris, anything that you want to talk about that you guys at Kobalt, or you personally, or Kobalt coming up with, something that for our listeners to look for, or viewers, to look for in the next months or 2 or a year?
Yeah, just, I could reel off the amount of the signings and the artists and things that like I'm super excited about that we have coming through Kobalt. Again, just really, if people visit Kobalt's website, you'll see what our roster looks like. But we're continuously signing great things every day. I think we're working just very hard for the clients that we have, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, all great things has to come to an end. We appreciate having you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
Appreciate it. My pleasure, man. Good to have you. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the SoundBreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.